Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Zidandi Academy course summaries. If you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe, like, comment, and share. Oh, and for our Arabic-speaking audience, we've got you covered. Just follow the written translation right there at the bottom of your screen. Today, we're diving into a really powerful explainer. We're unpacking Dr. Abu Zaid Makki al-Kubi's 5th Aqidah lecture, and honestly, it covers something absolutely foundational: the methodology of how we interact with divine Sharia texts. You know, as an Islamic educator, I see this all the time. How we approach the Quran and the Sunnah literally shapes every single aspect of our faith. So let's just jump right in.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at 4 foundational pillars. First, reverence for divine texts. Second, acting on all texts. Third, navigating clear versus ambiguous texts. And finally, the big one, reason and divine revelation.
Starting off with Pillar 1, reverence for divine texts, the absolute foundation of faith.
Now, I want you to consider this legendary quote. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made that miraculous night journey from Mecca to Jerusalem and then ascended to the heavens, the Isra and Miraj, the polytheists were ecstatic. They thought, okay, we finally have a story absurd enough to make the Muslims doubt. So they rush over to Abu Bakr to tell him all about it. And his response? He just said, if he said it, he has spoken the truth. I mean, wow, that beautifully illustrates what pure, unfiltered submission to divine texts actually looks like. It is such a sharp contrast to folks who will reject crystal clear reports just because, well, it challenges their own limited logic. Because true reverence, it isn't just about belief in your heart, it's about action. The lesson gives us these incredible historical anecdotes. Take Uthman ibn Affan. During a severe famine, merchants offered him massive profits for a fully loaded caravan he owned, but he refused. He told them Allah had offered him a much better return, and he literally donated the whole shebang. Or picture the companion holding a handful of dates, listening to the Prophet describe paradise. It hits him that stopping to finish a snack would actually delay his entry into Jannah, so he just tosses them aside and rushes straight into battle. Or how about the companions immediately overturning their boiling cooking pots the very second the prohibition of domestic donkey meat was announced? The big takeaway here is that true reverence means immediate, unquestioning action the moment you hear the command of Allah. Moving on to Pillar 2, acting on all texts and the crucial importance of balance. You see, the Quran and Sunnah contain both texts of promise, so rewards and forgiveness, and texts of threat, which warn of punishment. Al-Sunnah harmonize both of these. This creates a beautifully balanced faith where you live right between hope and fear. But look what happens with the alternatives. Groups like the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila, they focus super heavily on the threats. And what does that lead to? Extremism, and declaring everyday sinners as complete disbelievers. On the flip side, you have the Murji'ah. They focus solely on the promises and completely ignore the threats, which inevitably leads to total negligence of righteous deeds. It's like a scale, right? Balance is everything. And this balance applies to destiny too. Notice how al-Sunnah accept the texts that say humans have free will and the texts that say Allah has ultimate divine decree. They take the whole picture. But groups like the Jabriyah, they only took the texts about divine decree, and they concluded that humans have zero will, that we're basically just a feather blowing around in the wind. By acting on all the texts, Orthodox Islam totally avoids these dangerous extremes. All right, Pillar 3, clear versus ambiguous texts and how we actually navigate meaning. So getting our definition straight here is absolutely vital. The Quran itself divides its verses into 2 categories. Al-Muhkam refers to the clear foundational texts. These are the mother of the book. They are totally straightforward with no room for doubt. Think of things like the command to pray or the oneness of God. Then you have Al-Mutashabih, which refers to ambiguous texts. These are verses where the exact nature isn't fully apparent on the surface, so they require a bit more contextualization. And guys, here is the ultimate dividing line, and honestly, it's fascinating. Al-Sunnah use the clear texts, the muhkam, as an anchor. They use them as a lens to explain and understand the ambiguous ones. Basically, the clear rules govern the unclear ones. Makes total sense, right? But innovators, they flip this entire process upside down. They'll hunt for an ambiguous text, isolate it from everything else, and use it to override the clear foundational rules just to justify what they already believe. Let's ground this with a practical example from the lesson, the divine attributes of Allah. When Allah describes himself as all-hearing or all-seeing, the basic meaning of hearing and seeing is perfectly clear to us. That's the muhkam. But the mechanics, the exact nature of it, the how, which scholars call the kayfiyah, well, that remains a complete mystery. That part is mutashabih. We leave that entirely to divine knowledge because, as a totally clear text reminds us,
There is nothing like unto him. Which brings us to Pillar 4, reason and divine revelation, the ultimate debate.
For centuries, various philosophical groups have claimed that there's this massive clash between reason and revelation. They argue that sometimes the divine text just doesn't make logical sense. But before we even entertain that, we have to ask a really foundational question. How are they actually defining reason in the first place?
The lesson points out a massive, massive distinction here. Orthodoxy views true reason as a natural, God-given instinct. It's our innate ability to recognize truth, understand cause and effect, and process reality. But theological sects, the people of Kalam, they defined reason using these super rigid Greek philosophical concepts. We're talking complex rules about substances, accidents, and atoms. They literally took foreign philosophical frameworks, slapped the label reason on them, and then had the audacity to judge the Quran and Sunnah against them.
So, does true, innate reason actually contradict revelation? No way. Dr. Abu Zaid gives this brilliant analogy to prove it. Imagine two men sleeping side by side in the exact same bed. One guy is having a beautiful dream about paradise. He's feeling immense joy, total bliss. The other guy? He's having a terrifying nightmare of punishment, feeling genuine agony. Now, to an observer standing in the room, both of these men are perfectly still. This proves that our minds can logically accept realities we can't physically see, like the unseen events of the grave or the afterlife, even if we can't fully comprehend the physical how of it. The intellect accepts it, even if it can't draw a blueprint for it.
And I absolutely love this next analogy from the lesson. It's kind of funny, but so profound. Imagine you use your intellect and realize, okay, I need some spiritual guidance. So you hail a taxi and ask the driver to take you to a renowned Islamic scholar, a mufti. You get there and the mufti gives you a religious ruling. But suddenly, your taxi driver chimes in and completely disagrees with the mufti. Now, who are you going to follow? Obviously, the mufti. Reason is just the taxi driver. It's simply the vehicle that transports us to the truth of revelation. But once it drops you off at the divine text, revelation takes over as the ultimate authority. You don't let the taxi driver override the expert, right? So the real game-changer takeaway for us today is this. Reason is absolutely crucial. A law constantly commands us to use our intellect, to ponder, to reflect. But true, innate reason is a vital follower of revelation, not an independent overriding judge. Since the creator of our intellect is the exact same as the revealer of the text, those two things are never, ever going to truly contradict. Finally, continue your Za journey and test your knowledge. Ultimately, true intellect leads to complete, willing submission to the divine. I highly encourage you to keep pushing forward in your learning journey through the official Zad Academy curriculum. Don't forget to log into your student portal and knock out those weekly questions to lock in what we've covered today. But before you go, I want to leave you with a question to really think about. Is your intellect driving you toward revelation, or is it secretly trying to override it? Jazakumullahu khairan for joining us for this explainer. Until next time, keep learning, keep reflecting, and assalamu alaikum.